Okay, this time we're going to be taking a look at a King's Indian attack. And it's not necessarily the opening that I found to be instructive, but the mindset when playing this game. Because I'm playing against a reasonably strong player in Lee Chess. His rating is 2301. And my mindset when playing was I just want a game. Especially when I play openings that I don't know how to play very well, like e4, I'm going to play like what I describe as old man chess, which is essentially I just want a position that can get to a playable middle game without me getting busted out of the opening in some tactical line that I have no idea how to play. So I choose a King's Indian attack, and my opponent chooses a line which scores very well for black. As you can see in the database after G6, it's 31% for both white and black, with the lion's share of games being decided drawn with 38%. Now, I realize this line is good, and black can angle for a colors reversed Fianchetto King's Indian, just being a tempo down, and that's a very, very solid opening. So as soon as we get here, I decide to go ahead and clip in the center, and you notice we quickly leave the database, but we're right back in it, and black substantially does well in the stats here. So let's see how I can generate play and get something going. After B6 is pretty clear the scheme of development that my opponent is trying to play for. So I go A4 and securing the B5 square, so my knight has this perma post on C4. And you normally see this type of development for black where they want to put the D knight on B4, so that way I can't play C3 because the D3 pawn would be hanging. And then you go Queen D7, Rook D8, and black just has the easier position to play. The engine does say equal, but I would take black here. When my opponent plays E6, this is already starting to be an indicator that he's waiting to see. And when I see that my opponent's waiting around, I like that strategy, but I don't have a position to where I'm going to be able to slowly and dramatically improve my position like black is. Black just simply dominates the D file and then starts poking the position with knight D to B4. So I start initiating some trades, and once we get to this position, Queen C7, I go, okay, the queen could be misplaced here, so I'm going to put the knight back, and I'd like to move this knight if possible at some point so I can play bishop F4, but in the meantime, I can play C3 to stop knight B4, put my queen on C2, and then I'm in a position to gradually improve with the only one pawn weakness of the backwards pawn, which is very, very hard to get to. My opponent plays Rook A8, I go C3, everything's going according to plan for me, and this will show you, again, if you do not play with a clear plan, how quickly your position can fall apart. Now, the plan in the position for black is pretty straightforward. Play against the one weakness. Now notice the engine's first choice here is E5. That is just making sure that it's cementing this weakness, it's not going anywhere, and you can pile on with the rooks or go for the engine's plan of, playing for just the expansion Rook Fe8 with the eventual like H5 or even F5 type stuff. But personally, I would double rooks here and just let all the pressure come to bear on D3. My opponent goes knight E7. Well, that gives me simple development here. And the most accurate move is going to be Queen D7 to bother this pawn, where we get this take situation. And after Queen E2, we would have, an equal game. What's wrong with a move like Bishop D6 here? I'm not quite sure. I objectively probably would have gone for this just because I'm creating an imbalance. Even though that I know the knight is worse than the bishop here, this is still not a trivial position to try to win from the black side. So Queen C2, double rooks on the E file, put a rook on E3, etc., and just kind of sit tight. And if I can get the rooks off the board, the queen and knight combo is going to be better than the queen and bishop. So Queen C8 was played though, and now the rest of the game is a matter of technique. So I played a nothing opening. I didn't show any prep. I didn't have to really think or do any work. I understood that my position's slightly worse. And I'll get questions sometimes. It's like, well, why do you play mediocre lines? Well, do I have to show my best preparation? So say if I'm playing in a 4-round one-day tournament, and when I have white, am I going to play my absolute best stuff against somebody who's 600 to 800 points lower? And then in round 3, when I'm playing the other top seed, and he plays the same stuff as the guy I played in round 1, he had time to prepare in the meantime, seeing that game. Because the strongest players, you'll notice, they're walking around the room. They're taking notes. They know what's going on. So I am not going to show preparation against lower rated players unless I deem them a big enough threat that I need to actually work and show prep at the board. But Queen C8 here, Knight D6, and I'm not going to miss a beat here. And my tactics may not be that great lately because I haven't been studying, but I'm gonna miss taking. I'm not gonna miss taking on E7. Takes on G2, and I find this position instructive because I've seen my students lose games like this with white. So it's very important. Like this was the main reason I wanted to do a video on this game, was this particular position. Anyone can look at this and go, yes, white's better. Yes, white's winning. But they can struggle to prove it. So the goals when playing these types of positions, when you've got, the set of rooks versus a minor piece in a rook, you're angling to either make the trades, get the ladies off the board and a set of rooks off the board, where my rook will get into the position somehow, and the bishop won't be able to defend. So say if I remove the A pawn from the position and the queens and the 2 circled rooks, all I have to do is play A5, and there's really no way for black to stop me from getting into the position. B5, A6, and then I'm going to lift the rook to A5, and there's no way to hold on to all the pawns. And that would be how I would break through. So, counterplay. I'm keeping my queen on F3 because it protects my king. No checks, no swish and zug, nothing to worry about. And again, my only weakness in the position is D3. So the goal for black is to try not to trade anymore. The goal for white is to trade. Open up the position to get the rooks better. So with those goals in mind, let's see what happens. Rook D7 hits D3. I see that he's probably going to double up, so I go ahead and use some prophylaxis. I'm not so worried about C4 because I'll just go D4. No problems. And here, just like we talked about before, you got to activate your pieces and get them in the position. So I go A5. And I am seriously not concerned with him taking. This is one of those positions that my students go, well, why did you just give him a free pawn? No, I ruined the structure and made targets forever. My rook now has easy access into the position and can bother these pawns forever. And queen c6 is a good move, giving a tickle to this pawn where it becomes difficult, and that helps with my goal of trading down if he was to take there. It becomes very difficult to hold on to everything. So queen a4 is recommended, but white clearly has an edge here. But after a5, my opponent plays the more human move, b5, which tries to shut things down. And queen c6 was my first inclination, but I was like, well, a6 looks very nice. I'm securing the b7 square for the long term, and that pawn is just that much closer to it's a girl. So h5, I'm like, okay, well, you're looking to potentially play h4. That's counterplay that I'm not going to let you have. And b4, you got to try something. He's trying to make his bishop better. But looking at this position, how best can we handle the situation? And I look at this and I go, okay, if I take the pawn, we're doing some liquidation. But is the liquidation going to be that bad? And I don't have any weaknesses, and I need to get this rook into an open position. So I'm going to take, and I think a lot of players would have the reaction, oh, I'm lined up on this diagonal, I better like defend or something. Defense is such a terrible word in most positions. So rook a4, if you want to trade, fine. And I get exactly what I want. My rook's in an open position, and his bishop's kind of just here. He goes b3, and that does nothing but delay the inevitable. My rook is now in an excellent position, and my a6 move is starting to be an anchor for the rook in the future to force trade downs. When he takes, I can already begin to see how this game is going to end, because no matter what happens from this point, after rook b7, this rook essentially can't move because of the X-ray mate threat. And this bishop's a non-factor. So looking at ideas like rook b1 and replacing the rook after captures is devastating. And when I see bishop b6, I'm like, okay, well, this stops this kind of captures and just replace the rook idea. So I'm going to go d4. And if black sits, say he goes king g7 or something, well, I can just go d5. And nothing can be really done here, because if he takes, I can go rook takes d5, and the rook's immune to capture because of the mate threat. In the main game, I mean, there's nothing that black can do. There's no optimal defense. It is just over. He took. I guess you gotta play this type of move every now and then. It's a blunder, but hope chess. You're lost no matter what, so you have to make a practical decision that you think is going to give you the best chances to win, always. So he did. And the tactic to win it, rook takes d4, because again, that rook on d7 can't move. So pretty clean tactical motifs towards the end there in this non-enthusiastic King's Indian attack by white.